Good evening, everybody. I will call this land use planning meeting to order at 6:30 p.m. by formally recognizing that we are meeting on Aboriginal land that has been inhabited by Indigenous people from the beginning. As settlers, we're grateful for the opportunity to be good stewards of this land and thank all the generations of people who have taken care of this place for thousands of years. In particular, we acknowledge the proud heritage of our neighbors from the Alderville First Nation and the Mohawks of the Bay of Quinte. And I will ask everyone to please silence cell phones and other electronic devices if you haven't done so already. I have a motion moved by Councillor Bateman, seconded by Councillor Anderson, that Council approve the November 12th, 2019 planning meeting agenda as presented. Is there any discussion? Councillor Bateman.
For anybody that's using the tablet, 6.2 attachment number 3 belongs under 6.3 on the tablets.
6.2, the third attachment.
Yeah, it's a drawing, and it pertains to the 6.3 road allowance closure.
Very well. Thank you. Any other comment? All those in favor? Are there any opposed? Motion is carried. And I'll ask if there are any declarations of pecuniary interest, and if so, please state the general nature thereof. Councillor Tadman. Your microphone, please.
Sorry. I'd like to declare at 6.2, because this is part ownership with a relative. Not me. Paul Quick is a relative.
Understood. Thank you. Councillor LeBlanc.
I'd like to declare on 5.2 as I'm one of the owners of the property to be severed.
Thank you. Anyone else? We have no delegations this evening, so we'll move straight into our statutory public meeting with a motion moved by Councillor Anderson, seconded by Councillor Bateman, that Council move into the November 12th, 2019 statutory public meeting at 6:32 p.m. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Are there any opposed? The motion's carried. We have one item in our statutory public meeting this evening, and it's with regard to file number B22, 2019. The owner is Rebecca LeBlanc. The applicant is Michael Vandertorn. The location is Part Lot 28, Concession A, 15598 County Road 2. Mr. Tai, by what method and on what date was notice of this consent application given?
Thank you, Your Worship. Notice was given of the application by first-class prepaid mail to all property owners within 60 meters on October 25th, 2019. Notice was also circulated to all ministries and agencies prescribed under the Act, as well as the property was posted.
Thank you, Mr. Tai. And would you please explain the background regarding this consent application?
The application is requesting that a portion of the subject property be severed to serve as a lot addition to the adjacent property, being 15580 County Road 2. The proposed severed parcel was originally owned by Mr. Van der Toorn and was severed in 2009 by consent application B04-2009 for lot addition to the LeBlanc property. This consent application would serve to effectively reverse the 2009 lot addition. The severed, retained, and benefiting lands would provide for approximately the severed parcel, 20.9 acres, the enlarged lot, 32 acres, and the retained lot, 33 acres.
Thank you, Mr. Tai. Does the owner or applicant wish to make any comments? Right up there. Sure. One moment, sir. The deputy clerk's going to bring you a chair so that you don't have to...
I'll stand, or is that rude? Or?
No. It's rude of us not to have offered you a chair. There you are.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Spencer Hutchison. I am a semi-retired land use planner with 29 years of various communities in Eastern Ontario and a friend of the family of the applicant. As my colleague in the planning profession pointed out, this is a reversal of a previous severance. So in one sense, we're just going back in time to when it was transferred from Vandertorn to LeBlanc, and now LeBlanc is offering it back. So in that sense, it's, as far as I'm concerned, pretty straightforward. It's just a lot line adjustment. Nothing's being created, and it's just going back in time. We have received and read the report. We support all the recommendations and realize at this hour there is a split zoning north to south on this property from RU in the north to RU 32 in the south, and that should be dealt with and put under one zone, which again was a condition recommended. So we're in support of what your staff has presented before you this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Hutchison. Are there persons present who have questions or comments regarding the proposed consent application? None noted. And does the owner, applicant, or agent in this case wish to make any final comments?
We're just here to answer any questions, and just for my own edification, what is the timeline? We're discussing this in a public meeting tonight, so just where do we go from here? I know there's a rezoning if this gets approved.
I actually probably should have asked members of council if they had any questions first, but Mr. Tai, would you please answer that question?
Yes, through the chair, once we issue notice of provisional consent, a notice of decision is a 20-day appeal period. We typically would be able to get the notice out probably by Thursday.
Thank you. Members of council, any questions or comments? None noted. So again, final comments if you have any.
Thank you for this opportunity.
Appreciate it. Mr. Tai, any final comments?
Not at this time.
Thank you. Does council wish to make a decision on this consent? And we'll do so with a motion moved by Councillor Anderson, seconded by Councillor Bateman. That this report regarding consent application B22-2019 as prepared by the municipal planning consultants be received. That Council of the Municipality of Brighton grant provisional consent application B22-2019 subject to the following conditions. That the severed parcel be merged on title with the adjoining property to the south and having roll number 1408-206-040-02500. That the severed parcel together with the benefiting lands be rezoned to the satisfaction of the municipality, that all taxes on each of the severed and retained lots be in compliance with municipal requirements prior to the deed being stamped, and that 3 paper copies and a digital copy of a registrable survey and the appropriate deed be prepared and deposited with the municipal clerk within 1 year of the granting of consent. Questions or comments from members of council? All those in favor? Are there any opposed? The motion is carried. Thank you. Thank you. I have a motion moved by Councillor Bateman, seconded by Councillor Anderson, that council move out of the November 12th, 2019 statutory public meeting at 6:38 p.m. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. And we'll move into planning reports. Our first planning report is with regard to removal of the holding provision from Roslyn Estates. Mr. Tai, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
Only to advise council that the revised pre-surfacing agreement for phase 2 was in fact executed on Thursday morning of last week, I believe, fully executed, and that agreement does contain a detailed list of deficiencies in phase 1 together with a schedule for their correction.
Thank you, Mr. Ty. I have a motion moved by Councillor Bateman, seconded by Councillor Anderson. The council receives the report regarding Roslyn Estates Subdivision Phase 2 as prepared by the municipal planning consultant, and the council proceed to enact a bylaw having the effect of removing the holding provision on the lands as it applies to 3 lots within the Roslyn Estates Phase 2 subdivision in order to permit the construction of a maximum of 3 model homes. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? The motion's carried. Our next planning report is with regard to Brighton Meadows, application for a plan of subdivision, an official plan amendment, and a zoning bylaw amendment. Mr. Ty, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
Yes, Your Worship, the municipality received this application approximately 4 weeks ago. Only yesterday were we able to deem it complete under the Planning Act. You do have 30 days to do that. However, we have since circulated the application and reports to the municipality's peer reviewer, technical staff in-house, as well as prescribed ministries and agencies, in order for them to provide us with the requested conditions in the event the draft plan approval is granted by council.
At this stage, our report is just for information. There will be a public meeting, a statutory public meeting in this regard?
Yes, that's correct. This is only the very infancy of the process. I will be also speaking with the planner of for this particular project as to whether they have any intentions of also hosting their own informal open house for the neighborhood.
That does seem to be a popular thing for the neighbors to want, so thank you for that. This is not the first time a proposal on these lands has come before council. I recall one back in 2006-07, somewhere around there. Is this just an update to that, or?
Through the chair, that particular development did have draft plan approval, however it lapsed. And during the intervening time period between when that received draft plan approval and now, a lot has changed in the planning regime.
Right.
So as a consequence, all of the technical studies really needed to be completely redone, and that comprises the submission we have before us.
Thank you, Mr. Ty. I have a motion moved by Councillor Bateman, seconded by Councillor Anderson. The council receives the report regarding the proposed Brighton Meadows subdivision for information as prepared by the municipal planning consultant. Any questions or comments from members of council? Councillor Bateman.
I just had a question regarding the reports. Are they online, or can we go down and review them at Sharp Street? Because I'm very interested in, not just for this proposal, but even the one off Cedar Street, the traffic impact studies, and even the flood line evaluations. Can we go see them at any time leading up to this, or?
Through the chair, I'm not aware if they're yet online. The municipality has 15 days from the time you deem the application complete to release the information to the public at large. However, we do have multiple hard copies at Sharp Road. We're not in a position to unfortunately start high-level production of photocopying and things like that, but if anyone wishes to come in and simply read the report at their leisure in the office, they're welcome to do that.
Thank you. Councillor Rowley.
Thank you, Mayor. There again, I don't know, this is probably in the early part, in the early stage, and it's certainly not to hold up the process. But per my recollection of a few years ago, and not necessarily with this application, that the property that we're speaking about, which is behind houses, north of houses already on Raglan Street, am I to understand that that land is fairly low? Do all of the houses there, are they already all on sewer and water, or are some still on septic on that area? I'm just wondering what kind of impact that will have working with that northern piece of property now.
Mr. Ty.
The chair, I believe they're on municipal services, but I could certainly undertake to confirm that. This particular development will be on an extension of municipal services only. Any adverse impacts on the existing systems on the existing lots, should they be private, would certainly have to be seriously assessed at the time the staff review the reports.
Thank you. Councillor Anderson.
Well, I just ask it because I've been asked by a couple of people about the boundary. It's all within our boundary, obviously. We wouldn't be talking about it, correct? And there's a portion of the property, though, that will be for future use outside the boundary.
Through the chair, the proposed subdivision is comprised of both, it's all within the urban boundary of Brighton. A portion of the property is within the built boundary. The balance of the proposed development is outside the built boundary, but within the urban boundary. And the official plan acknowledges that through an official plan amendment, the property outside the built boundary is eligible for development as well. That's the approach that they've taken.
Okay, good.
So some of this, just to clarify, some of this proposed subdivision is outside the built boundary?
That's correct.
But because it's in the urban area and part of a subdivision agreement, it can be considered under the Planning Act or under our OP?
That's correct.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Vink.
Thank you. Whenever we see plans for new subdivisions, it was the same a few weeks ago as well, or last month, people ask questions about water and wastewater and traffic and all these things, and some other things like doctors and things that are out of our control, but in schools. But when it comes to water and wastewater and even drainage, all those things are part of the plan when it comes forward. Is that correct? Like, just give us an idea of what you all have to receive in order to even allow this to happen.
Through the chair, that's correct. The technical reports vary from it could be geotechnical, it could be hydrogeological, it could be environmental, traffic, and so on, archaeology, of course. And those reports are distributed to various individuals who have expertise in order to review those. If we don't have the expertise in-house, then we go outside and use municipal peer reviewers. With respect to education and other services outside or beyond the municipality jurisdiction, that's why we circulate to, say, the boards of education and so on, in order to garner their feedback. If they come back and say, this development, if it proceeds within X number of years, we're going to have serious accommodation issues. That has to be taken into account as part of the approval.
Thank you. Any other, Councillor Anderson?
Have you had any indication of that with any other developments?
Through the chair, no.
Councillor LeBlanc?
Through you, Chair. I lived on 156 Ontario Street for 15 years, and I used to hunt in these backwoods. There's only one little creek, it's very high, it's not wet area. My concerns is basically the one square block, how they drain it, make sure they're drained, because as a councillor, I've dealt with other subdivisions that were here before I became a councillor. So this one here, I hope that they look at it. And since there's going to be low housing, they should also look at a bus stop. Hopefully that comes forward, that they talk to the school board for busing. Mm-hmm. And otherwise than that, I can support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor LeBlanc. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you. Another thing that often comes up is the pricing of the type of housing, which of course we have no control over pricing, but new development like this usually includes a variety of housing. Can you tell us what kind of housing is proposed for this site?
Through the chair, this proposed development offers quite a broad mix of housing types. The southerly portion of the proposed development, the larger portion, is to be by plan a subdivision, hence the variation in housing forms, whereas the more northerly portion is to be developed as a second phase, if you will, a major phase. It will be in the form of condominiums, which, depending on the marketplace, do tend to be somewhat more affordable or accessible.
And of course, the theory from the province is the more supply we create, the cheaper the housing, because the the law of the capitalist market says if you have more stuff on the market, it should be cheaper. I don't know if that's been our experience here in Brighton, but it's an interesting inelastic market discussion that we don't have to have tonight. My concerns are also about drainage. The homes that are on the north side of Raglan have experienced some fairly significant flooding in the past, and it doesn't seem to be related to other forms of flooding in Brighton. It's all entirely meltwater in the spring. So I'm just asking staff to be extra cautious of that as this development moves forward from a drainage plan point of view. Thank you. Councillor LeBlanc.
When you're talking about drainage, I hope that they have a stormwater management pond, and I didn't see it on their property. But I also saw that they wanted to donate, 39 or 34 acres to the town as parkland. So just to see that where the pond would be, where it sits. Right? I know this area very well.
I suspect the 39 acres isn't developable.
Chair, during pre-consultation, which was back a few months ago, it was emphasized to staff that the development team had worked very hard and very long over a period of time with Lower Trent to firm up an agreed-to boundary of the EP zone. So I'm anticipating that a lot of work and analysis have gone into that.
Right. Thank you. And just, I think there are some homes that are still on some private services along the north of Raglan, just by way of information. Yeah, I was the three westernmost, I believe. Yeah. Anyway, that's just by way of information, and we'd want to be cautious as we move forward about those private services. Anything else on this? I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried. Thanks, Doug. And our third planning report is with regard to a proposed closure of a road allowance between lots 2, concession 7. Mr. Tai, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
Through the chair, nothing further. However, due to the occasioning staff in the building department, I apologize for not having been able to research building permit files in order to determine whether or not the existing barn type structure, if you will, that already exists on the municipality's road allowance was the recipient of a building permit. I will undertake to confirm that before the end of this week. In terms of what's before council this evening, I'm not aware that anything necessarily turns on that. However, if there is a building on municipal property that was constructed in the absence of a building permit, the municipality does have a couple of options. Removing it depends how long it's been there. However, an encroachment agreement, I think, would be an appropriate consideration in this case. Purely, it's a mutual benefit to both the property owner and the municipality in terms of liability to the municipality.
Thank you, Mr. Tai. I have a motion moved by Councillor LeBlanc, seconded by Councillor Tadman, that the report regarding the partial closure of the noted road allowance as prepared by the municipal planning consultant be received. And is that good enough, or should we make a note of whether we're accepting or denying the request?
Through the chair, as stated in the report, staff are unable to recommend that the municipality agree to stop up, close and convey the unopened road allowance, that portion of it. However, the final decision does rest with council. If council are inclined to deny the request, then that should be specified in the motion.
Councillor LeBlanc, is that the intention of the motion, to deny the request?
Yes, because we can't have everybody building on the road allowance and then coming back later on to have it closed. That would set us huge precedents if we allowed that to happen.
And I assume you're okay with that, Councillor Tadman, as the seconder? So I've added the line that council deny the request to close the road allowance noted in the report. Is that satisfactory to staff? Councillor Bateman?
I sent Daryl the question earlier today that he was referring to, because when I was looking at the diagram, and to Daryl's point, he's waiting to get the information. Should we make a decision, yes or no, when we don't know whether this building was granted permission from the municipality to be there? That's what I was looking for. Did they apply for a permit, get it, build it, and we dropped the ball?
So that's entirely up to council, whether we accept it, deny it, defer it, refer it. We can do all sorts of wonderful things if we want. Right now, the motion before us is to deny it. Deputy Mayor?
I think maybe we should defer it to our next meeting, and then when we have this information, we can make a better decision. Would that not be the way to go?
Deputy Mayor, are you putting a motion to defer
Yes, I am.
this motion on the floor? Deputy Clerk, could you please draft a motion to defer this motion to the planning meeting of December? I assume we're having a planning meeting in December?
I'm to understand we are, yes.
Or you could just put next planning meeting, so just in case.
I'm not allowed to ask a
we have a
question?
motion. We're about to have a motion to defer on the floor, and that's not debatable. Go ahead and ask your question.
Thank you. If I could have some clarification from Mr. Tai regarding what an encroachment agreement is, just so I have a better understanding.
Mr. Tai?
Through the chair, quite simply, an encroachment agreement would allow the property owner to either establish a use on the road allowance or recognize an existing use, and it would also serve to hold the municipality harmless in the event of any mishap that that particular structure was involved with.
Thank you. I have a motion moved by Deputy Mayor Vink, seconded by Councillor Rowley, that Council defer item 6.3 to the next planning meeting. All in favor? Any opposed? The motion's carried. We have nothing under unfinished business, so we'll move into bylaws. I have a motion moved by Councillor LeBlanc, seconded by Councillor Tadman. The council gives a bylaw its first, second, and third reading and finally passes on this date, being a bylaw to amend bylaw number 059-2015 and bylaw number 140-2002 as amended, otherwise known as the Comprehensive Zoning Bylaw of the Municipality of Brighton. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried. And I have a motion moved by Councillor Tadman, seconded by Councillor LeBlanc, that council gives a bylaw its first, second, and third reading and finally passes on this date, being a bylaw to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute an agreement between the Corporation of the Municipality of Brighton and Gordon Toby Developments Limited regarding a license of occupation located in part of lots 1 and 2, concession 1, part of lot 15, registered plan 28, Municipality of Brighton, County of Northumberland. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. I have a motion moved by Councillor Tadman, seconded by Councillor LeBlanc. The council gives a bylaw its first, second, and third reading and finally passes on this date, being a bylaw to authorize the mayor and the clerk to execute a cost-sharing agreement between the Corporation of the Municipality of Brighton and Gordon Toby Developments Limited regarding the Harbour Point and Lance stormwater management facilities located on part of Lot 15, Registered Plan 28, part of Lots 1 and 2, Concession 1, in the Municipality of Brighton and the County of Northumberland. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Those opposed? The motion's carried. We'll now move into question period. If there's any members of the public with questions about an item that was on the agenda, now is your opportunity. Mrs. Richardson.
Brenda Richardson, 104 Raglan. I have a couple of questions in regards to Brighton Meadows, and I don't know if it's premature or what, but when the council will hold their public meeting, the night of the public meeting, is that when they can actually agree to pass the proposed development?
We often do, coming out of a statutory public meeting, finish it off by either passing or denying the request before us.
Okay, I was down and speaking to Ms. Thompson at Public Works, and she gave me a copy of the traffic study just to look at. I didn't, because it's still in a proposed. And to me, there was a couple errors in there, because it mentions that there's only one school bus stop on Ontario Street. She went into detail explaining about the traffic flow, which was going to be directing it down Raglan Street. We have a school bus stop on Raglan Street. It's not indicated in the traffic study. Now, if these people are coming from this new development and come down Raglan and want to go into town to Sobeys, No Frills, whatever, they are going to go down Cedar Street. And there's 2 school bus stops on Cedar Street. And we also, again, have the park on Raglan Street with the kids running back and forth. It says that it's a low traffic volume. Some of the figures in the traffic study are not the same as when the Black Cat was posted last year. The Black Cat shows higher volume than what's on this traffic study. And when I spoke to Mr. Parkinson, he said that we did have a problem with speeding and traffic on Raglan already, and suggested that the neighbors start calling the police for radar. They came once in a cruiser. Everyone stops and slows down when there's a cruiser. But anyway, I did a little bit of a traffic study on my own, and since Raglan has been opened, I went down, drove around, and did a house count. And with Raglan open and going down into Brighton by the Bay, I think it's Sherman, Foxden, Deerfield, we now have approximately 152 houses that now have access to Raglan, that are using it to go into town, whether it's by Cedar or to go to Bowes. And I did not include Nautical or Pier, because they also have the option of using Beacon, as I did not include the houses on the opposite side of Ontario Street, because they can also go into town into Ontario Street. This is a lot of traffic. We're looking at like 400 total of 400 more homes that's going to be using Raglan, and I think there should be a more extensive traffic study, and perhaps the Black Cat should be put back up, and a more looking into the school bus.
So I assume your question is, will there be?
Could we have a
more extensive
traffic study in regards to this?
I can't answer that question, Mr. Ty. Can you offer some advice in that regard?
I'm not familiar with the Black Cat. However, I have been making notes, and I'll certainly pursue your questions with Preston, as well as share them with our peer review engineering team.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ty. I appreciate it. Thank you, Council.
Because presumably we will be peer reviewing everything, including the traffic study, correct?
Oh, that's correct, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Any other questions from members of the public? Thank you. I have a motion moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Councillor Tadman. The Council gives a bylaw its first, second, and third reading and finally passes on this date, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Corporation of the Municipality of Brighton planning meeting held on November 12th, 2019. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Those opposed? The motion's carried. And I have a motion moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Councillor Tadman, that the November 12th, 2019 planning meeting adjourn at 7:04 p.m. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you all.